Skim boom bam. Skim bam All right, hey there. This is Ashkahn.
I'm Graham.
All right.
And today's question is, how am I supposed to get a construction quote without having a specific space in mind yet? The bank is requiring one.
The bank's requiring one.
Yeah. So this is not an uncommon problem that you hit during the process, which is there's this whole like chicken and egg thing. Sometimes it's between the health department
and like buying a float tank.
Yeah. They want specifics of what kind of tank that you're having, but you don't have a loan yet. But the bank wants to know that you can get health department approval before you can open, or the bank themselves wants to see realistic quotes on moving into a space so they know you're not just making up numbers, but you don't have a space because you can't get one until you get the bank loan so you can sign the lease. Right, and it just kind of like goes around and around. And from someone who's approaching this for the first time, it can seem like absolute madness, which it kind of is. So if you have that viewpoint, it's understandable. Yeah, you have that for a reason. So what do you do?
Yeah, good question.
So pretty much what I think the most cost, and you'll end up having to double pay some money here, and there's no getting around that. But whenever you don't have your building solidified, your lease signed, you have the space you're for sure moving into, you kind of have two options. One is to figure out a representative space, like just sort of look around at a few different spaces around town, get a sense for what kind of area you might want to move into, what the costs are, the ultimate square footage that you'd have. And then based on that, you can kind of draw up just, a rough size for what your space is, whether it's like 40 feet by 40 feet or 50 feet by 60 feet or whatever it is,
Yeah, the nice thing is most often you're going to be gutting whatever space you get anyway. So like considering that you're going to be in a pretty like fresh, empty sort of block is not that far off from reality.
No, and maybe your space will end up being a little bit different, or you'll have to totally redo your plans when you move in. But at the very least, it's indicative enough that you can show it to the bank and say, like, hey, this is the kind of space we're thinking about moving into. And then the other half of it is actually having your draftsperson or your architect or whoever's doing the plans draw up what a representational float center might look like in that space. And so this is where you end up having to double pay for some work. So definitely what you don't want to do is pay for an absolute, like a full set of plans meant to pass inspection, everything that you need to actually move into this space that doesn't even exist yet, right? Because everything's almost certainly going to change once you find a real building and get a real lease, go into your real float center life. So you're like, it's really, you make an estimate of what your space would look like. And then when you're drawing up plans, it's kind of just an estimate of plans. You want to have it marked down that, yeah, you're installing this many float rooms. There will be a lobby. Float rooms are going to be double thick. You kind of have this list of requirements that you have for the build out, and then you're getting a quote from the contractor on that. Those bids can largely be reused too when the contractor goes to move into your actual space, knowing that the walls are double thick, knowing that you have a certain amount of amps going into the space, kind of making general assumptions based on just the state of commercial buildings around your town. All of those are things that, again, like at least the knowledge of those and the bid request minus the specific plan drawings should all still come in handy when you go to make your real drawings.
And, the nice thing is this will give you an estimate of what the heck's going on and how much construction in your area is going to cost. And, I think the other thing that is probably good to put into this is just to add some kind of contingency onto it. Because often in your ideal world, you're not going to run into these weird little eccentricities that come with the spaces that you're eventually actually going to run into, dealing with like an extra bit of soundproofing along one wall because you have a certain neighbor or whatever it is. So just keep that in mind too. Like as long as you're building something like super generic where there's no crazy random hurdles, like just put aside an extra chunk of money for that kind of unexpected reality.
Yeah, and hopefully that's built into your construction contract as well when you ultimately get that drawn up. And certainly your business plan, if you are taking this to a bank, which it sounds like you are for getting a bank loan, for example, then the bank will want to see contingencies written in there too. Like the number of construction projects that have just gone exactly as planned is probably very close to zero, if not zero, especially on something of this scale. So if you don't have contingencies written in there, it's actually likely something you'll get some pushback on from the bank as well. So that's kind of the deal. Like you do have to pay a little extra double time, maybe even for if you are using a real estate agent or real estate lawyer, a little extra of their time to find 3 buildings that might be representative. Sometimes the bank will be very specific about what they want to see, too. They'll say, hey, can you just give me a few examples of spaces that you might move into and then an estimate of what that'll cost? Or they'll say, like the bank will specifically say, hey, we want a drawn-up plan of what your space would look like in a representational space or something like that. So, if it seems like your contractor or your draftsperson for drawing up the plans for this first hypothetical model is going to be charging you way too much, maybe even just go back to your bank representative too and ask what exactly they need and how in depth it needs to go. Because, although they might have requested an actual plan drawing, maybe the case is that just a written out list of what you want to go into your center and a rough bid and like a square footage number would be fine. You don't actually need to draw up plans.
Because, you do have, I think there's a lot of, you have an easily ability to impress people with the kind of construction that goes into float centers. So I think even just going with like, hey, we need to get this specific type of soundproof drywall, and here's the price of that per square foot, and here's my estimate of square footage of wall space, and we have to do double stud walls, so here's my estimate of like lumber and spacing. There's a lot you kind of just know off the bat that I think that would sound very impressive, and like you really had your shit together when you went to the bank representative.
Yeah, and I guess I always like to pay attention to small projects like this that aren't really final. The idea of getting some plans drawn up for a space that you might move into before you do is actually like a relatively minimal project. So if you are choosing between different drafts people or different agencies for actually drawing up the plans for your real center, this might be a good little test case where you can actually have 2 or 3 different plans drawn up just in order to get past the bank. Or again, sometimes this pops up for the health department who wants to see this kind of documentation. And yeah, finding like small tasks that you are able to vet your contractors on without getting too deeply into bed with them is actually a really nice boon sometimes when it comes along. So if you hit this stage and you haven't chosen your draftsperson, think about this maybe as a nice test that you can put in front of a few different people.
Yeah, you might notice one person gets back to you in a few days and the other one takes 3 weeks and 4 emails to respond to you. Like those are good early warning signs of who you want to work with.
Yeah, someone literally just scrawled their thing on the back of a McDonald's napkin and the other person, it's a nice CAD drawing. Yeah. Also things to pay attention to. Warning signs, I like to call them.
Yeah. You might not notice those at first, but they're kind of subtle.
And that's pretty much it. It is a really crazy process, and you might find it for other things as well. And just know, like, the people asking you to jump through these hoops also realize, hopefully, that you probably don't have a real building yet, and all of this is a little bit made up. So, just recognizing the fictional nature of it, and then asking for clarification if you do hit any weird impasses is probably my best last advice I have.
Cool. Well, if you guys have other questions you want to ask us, you can go over to dailysolutions.
What's our website? What do you?
Float Tank Solutions, floattanksolutions.com/podcast. I'm pretty sure is what it is. And that's good. Type them there. Cool. All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.